number 1, and I'm there if I pan to it. Now, the major use for this is in fact to preset these buttons to the lens angles which correspond to the fixed lenses we used to use in the days of turret cameras. There's a wide tendency really to like to have these points as points of reference to go to, and normally we'd have them set up as 35 degrees, 24 degrees, 16 degrees and 9 degrees. We can then go to them as soon as we like, and they're very good points of reference to keep the perspective in the scene the same. The buttons at the bottom select the narrowest angle, which is 5 degrees, and the widest angle, which is 50 degrees. There's wide variation of opinion, really, on whether these should be used. A lot of cameramen prefer them as points of reference, but a lot of cameramen, again, don't use them at all. They merely use the zoom control, the manual zoom control. Personally, I like them because they are good points of reference, and it's useful to know where you are in relation to other things and to keep the perspectives matching throughout the production. Let's look inside the camera. Incidentally, I should say in passing that, of course, the controls on the viewfinder do allow you also to tilt it, so that, if I can show this before I go on to the inside, if you're craned up very high and tilted down, you can still see into the viewfinder. And conversely, if you're down and panned up, you can tilt the viewfinder so you can still see into the viewfinder. Very useful control that. It would also be of use if the thing swiveled from side to side, so that when one is doing crabbing shots like this, it would be a bit more easy to see into the viewfinder. A refinement. It may happen in the future that manufacturers can build this in. We very much hope so. Let's just look inside of the camera now to get some idea of the complexity. Down at the bottom, we see the lens servo equipment, and on the left here we can see the yokes which deflect the scanning in 2 of the tubes. These go in diagonally towards the optical block in the center, and there are 2 that you can see on this side, 2 which you can see on the other side. The only other control of any real need for the cameraman inside here, well, in fact the only one he should touch in the normal course of events, is this control, which is the yoke focus, and this enables you to set the focus of the tubes to the infinity focus of the zoom lens. It may have to be adjusted if the zoom lens is changed for any reason. Let's look round at the lens now, but before I do, I'll switch off the lens package by this switch, cap up the camera on this control at the back, which then means that no light can enter the camera and possibly burn the tube, and I'll put the chains on to the pan and tilt head. One on this side to stop it tilting down, and one on the other side, stop it tilting up. Now what I must also do for safety reasons, and if ever I want to take the camera off the mounting, is remove these pins from their stow position, train the camera down and insert them underneath these bars. The reason for that is that the camera weight acts down against gas pressure, which acts up in opposition to it, so that the camera is counterbalanced at whatever height you set the pedestal. If I were to take the camera off without putting these locking positions in, the whole thing would shoot up right to the top, and there'd be a rather nasty accident. So this is a very important safety precaution before ever removing the camera, and likewise the zoom, which is quite a heavy item. Now we're in a position where we can remove the zoom lens. First of all, we remove the lens hood, which is a plastic lens hood. Doesn't really do anybody any harm if you bump into them with it. Now we can see the camera itself. I'll have to just cross to the other side. This is the K lens, and you can tell it by the rectangular plate at the front. This is to keep the weight of the front glass element down. Of course, with a lens this size, there's a lot of weight in the lens itself. Now I remove this, again another safety pin. I can depress this bar, push up the lever, and the lens is free to pull out of the camera. Quite a hefty package, as you can see, with the servos, and the lens itself is all contained in here. 10:1 zoom lens with a minimum focusing distance of 16 inches. We have another Angenoux type for these cameras called a J lens, and the minimum focusing distance of that lens is 3 feet. They're somewhat cheaper, so we don't have K lenses on all cameras. While we've got the lens out, I'll just put it carefully on the floor. Let's have a look now just inside the camera. As you see, there's not much left inside the camera carcass when we've removed the lens. There's a multi-pin connection there which feeds all the signals to the servos on the zoom. Servo lens iris, which is done remotely from racks, and the zoom and focus signals which come from the pan bar controls. So apart from the lens, there's not very much really in the camera in terms of electronics. Most of it is upstairs in the room we know as racks of equipment, the bays of equipment, the camera control unit which processes the signal. I'll put the lens back in now to show you just how simple it is. Push it fully home with the bar extended and depress the bar, put in the pin, and we'll take a look at the other side of the camera, the cable. Just turn it all around. The cable is just over 1 inch thick and comes into the camera on this multi-way connector here. This is really the major encumbrance of the camera. You can't pan around through 360 degrees. The camera is anchored to this point at the bottom on the pedestal to stop undue strain up here on the connectors. And so if you want to do a 360 degree movement of the camera, or possibly more, it's necessary to wind the cable around the camera and to pre-plan it by undoing this clamp. The zoom demand control plugs in to this socket here on this panel. On the left of that there's a tracker socket, and the need for this is if the camera is mounted on a large camera crane, you can talk to the trackers on the back of the crane and give them instructions. On the top are talkback outputs for anybody who happens to be helping you, usually when the camera's on a pedestal. And on the left here there's a mains outlet socket for driving such things as headlamps and any odd item of equipment you might attach to the camera. We've seen it pretty well now, I think. I don't think there's much else we can show except for refinements really which are of more interest to professional cameramen. Just briefly on the head, very briefly, there's a good degree of pan down at this extent and pan up, and there are controls on the head for personal adjustment to preference of pan friction and round here tilt friction, which is a pad acting on this side plate of the head. Very good, much like head, and it's been in service for something like 12 years now. The pedestal crabs across the floor in any direction you want. All the wheels steer at once, and so the attitude of the base always remains the same. You can also pull this particular one by means of this tiller, which is very useful if you have a tracker assisting you with moves. Well, I think that gives us quite a good basic introduction to a broadcast colour camera, and I'd like to thank Crew 14 who've helped us out to do this little training production.